The first talk is about to begin. Now, may I invite Professor Paul Lam from the Center for Learning Enhancement and Research to introduce and welcome our speakers. Professor Lam, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming again. It's my honor to introduce you the speakers of our first talk. Dr. Nanda DIMITROV, pronunciation again, and Ms. Aisha HAQUE, Director and Associate Director of the Teaching Support Center at Western University, Canada. Nanda and Aisha have been keen advocates of active learning, and together they designed an online module on active learning, which also utilizes elements of flipped classroom. Today, they will lead us to explain what types of learning materials support student engagement online and what types of learning experiences are not suitable for online. They will also share flipped classroom examples. Well, that's great, we need that very much, from a variety of disciplines at Western University. Nanda and Aisha have just finished a training program in Hong Kong Baptist University, and luckily they take up this invitation to speak again in our university. So you are more than welcome. Thank you very much for having us. So now, without further ado, I give the time to Nanda and
we wanted to give a quick introduction and also meet all of you. Again, my name is Nanda DIMITROV. I'm the Director of the Teaching Support Center at Western University, and I'm also an adjunct researcher in our Faculty of Education. In my role at Western, I lead a team that facilitates faculty development, so we help our professors prepare for their teaching roles and meet about 1,500 participants a year. We also work with about 3,000 graduate students each year as they prepare to teach in our classrooms. Our doctoral students have a major role. And so today we're going to share some examples with you on how we facilitate a course that prepares our doctoral students for teaching. I hope that we can share with you examples from both very large, almost gigantic classes of our Biology 101 that includes about 1,400 students each semester, and some from smaller classes so that you can see a variety of examples and how you might consider flipped and blended approaches in these rooms. My disciplinary background is intercultural communication, so the issue I'm really passionate about is how to teach in diverse classrooms where students come from multiple cultural and disciplinary backgrounds. I'm not a researcher on flipped classroom, but I have a fabulous e-learning team. And so I can share with you some of the innovations that our e-learning team has taken on in facilitating transition to flipped learning. And then in our own teaching practice with Aisha, we've developed materials for flipping our own teaching in multiple contexts, so we'll share those with you today.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aisha HAQUE. I'm the Associate Director of Graduate Education at our Teaching Center at Western University. In that role, I work primarily with graduate students to prepare them for roles as future faculty. Prior to going to Western University, I taught full-time as a faculty member at a college in business communication and English literature. My disciplinary background is English literature, and I'll share a couple of examples with you from my own practice of how I incorporated flipped learning approaches in my own classrooms.
Wonderful. Before we begin, I wanted to get to know you a little bit, so I'm wondering if you could answer by raising your hand. I'm curious about the disciplines in the room. How many colleagues do we have who are from science, or science and engineering? Lots of scientists. Excellent. Arts and humanities, literature, languages. Wonderful. Social science. Excellent. Health and medical sciences. You, okay. Excellent. Music and arts. Maybe you raise your hand with arts and humanities. Other disciplines I forgot. And where am I?
You'll have to forgive us if we've forgotten entire disciplines.
We have our media information studies journalism is a separate faculty, so at home I would call them apart, but I'm guessing they're included in your other faculty. Where are our educational developer colleagues hiding? So if you work for a teaching and learning center, wonderful, right here at the front. We're delighted that you can join us today, and I'm hoping that we can share some really concrete strategies and research with you that you can all take back to your practice by the end of the day. At the end of the session, you'll have a chance to think about implementing what you learned in your own class as well. So we're hoping that by the end of the session today, you'll be able to identify some of the characteristics of flipped course design, describe, you will be able to also think about in your discipline and describe some examples of in-class learning activities and out-of-class learning activities that can be used to flip a classroom. Reflect on which components are most suitable for synchronous and asynchronous engagement for students. And finally, consider how you might apply this in your own course and spend a little bit of time reflecting on some things that you can implement from our session today in your own teaching. So most of you are familiar with the basic concept of a flipped classroom. The idea is that we take some time that we would spend on presenting information in the classroom that sort of, instead of the traditional classroom format, take it outside of the classroom, present it in advance, have students engage with the material so that they can spend the in-class time on classroom activities. That's the most traditional understanding of a flipped classroom. So, based on sort of the lecture method, although in most of our work we really promote active engagement in a classroom anyway, and so that traditional format is becoming less and less common already. So often the approach has been that colleagues have recorded their lectures, made the lecture materials available to students before so that in class they can engage with concepts, with problem solving, with active learning activities. I'm hoping that today we can show you many examples that illustrate that putting the lecture online is not really, it's just not the best way to flip a classroom. But there's lots of other ways in which we can engage students with key concepts and have them reflect on those key concepts before they come to class and before they can apply it in class. So the key component is that class time is spent on student-centered activities with a very high level of student engagement. Today, most of the flipped approaches happen to be also blended. The traditional flipped classroom is very common in arts and humanities. Students engage with the text, practice close reading before class, and come to class ready to engage in dialogue and a very deep analysis of that text. So it's not a new method. We've been doing this for a few thousand years. If you go back to the Greeks, to Renaissance literature, and even as early as the University of Bologna, one of the first universities in the 1200s in Italy. We've been doing flipped classrooms in some form or another, but what's new is we're doing it much more frequently, and we're doing it using technology in a blended format, where flipping can happen before or after class. So students engage with the material through a recorded lecture, other prompts, readings, learning materials before class, and engage with interactive activities in class, and then follow up afterwards. One of the questions that my colleagues often have is, how can I flip my class if students know what we're going to work on in class? It takes away the surprise. There are some things that are it's very important for learning to be spontaneous. Sometimes there are things we don't want to reveal to our students because that light bulb moment when they've seen an example they've never thought about before and they don't know what they're going to learn at the end of class is very exciting and leads to deep learning. But flipping doesn't have to happen only in this sequence that we tell students what we're going to learn and then we do it in class. It could happen the other way. We could start with experiential learning in class and then follow up with a deeper understanding of theory after class. The critical components are that we take, in our approach results in a thoughtful integration of outside of class and inside of class engagement through whatever modalities that lead to student learning and there's an overall coherence of the learning experience, and that those components are woven together thoughtfully. They consider where learners start, what their level of prior knowledge is, build on that to engage students in class, give them a chance to apply the material, demonstrate understanding, demonstrate problem solving, and then proceed through threshold concepts to more complex material as we take them through the learning journey in the class. So, I'd like to give you a challenge question here as we start. One of the things that we've seen faculty use very effectively is to use audio-visual or video materials in their teaching. So I'm going to show you an example in a minute. This comes from Harvard University. And I'd like to ask you to think about how many ways could you use this video in flipping a science class. This would be applicable to science or medical science possibly. So we'd like to invite you to get to, if you have a smartphone or device, get to the Today's Meet website. It's an online platform where you can put in sort of a tweet length comments. You will identify a login name. It doesn't have to be your name. You can be Superwoman or, Snoopy today, well, whoever you want to be, or just your initials. And then you're able to put in comments up to, I forget how many characters, short. It's about like 140, just like a tweet. So todaysmeet.com, flip CUHK. And so your question is, in how many ways could you use, give us some examples of ways in which you could use the following video in your teaching. And that's where we can just, no, we have to switch to it afterwards. I have to do today's one. Let's start this and then we'll. We'll play it for about another 30 seconds, and then if you can get to today's meet, I'll pull up the comments that are coming up. Reflection, what did you learn? Ask students to guess what this is about. So a University of Toronto professor who teaches biology showed this video at the beginning of class and said, tell me how many cellular processes you can identify. And students worked on it and they said, 3, 4, 5. And he says there should be 16 or 17. By the end of this course, you'll be able to identify every single one of them. So it became a competition between students in the class to figure out who could get the next one that they were going to learn about. Good after-class video, it should be effective. Groups can discuss in class and try to identify what are the key processes that they're seeing. We all like the animation. It's pretty amazing. It's awesome, especially if you watch it in high def. So it brings up one of the issues that creating high quality materials takes a big investment of time and money. Creating good materials is very time consuming. So it's useful to invest in resources that you're going to use again and again with large numbers of students. But I'd also like to encourage you to find ones like this that are available online. Someone's developed them and shared them with the Creative Commons license. There are some fantastic resources that you can use in your class, and you don't have to make everything from scratch. They could be tailored quite well to your classes.
I like the comment, after a boring introduction of the theory about cells.
One thing that you obviously have to be aware of, if you Google this video, it exists without any labels, so you can use it to have students guess what they see. But there's also a fully narrated version, so your students will find it very quickly. Don't give a grade for identifying the comments, because then you'll assess them on their Googling skills. And there's also one that's not narrated, but you see the labels of the processes, the motor protein, some of the other illustrations. So you see the range of things you've suggested. You could use it before class to engage students online before they come to class. They've had that excitement of, oh my gosh, I don't know what it is. I want to find out what happened when those proteins split apart. It's beautiful. I mean, there could be a whole lecture about art and cell structure in there. And I'm not a scientist, but even I get excited. And you could use it after class, during class. You can use it with individual learning. You can use it with groups. So there are many ways in which a really well-created resource can get students motivated at the beginning of the semester. Okay. So with that, I'll hand it over to Aisha.
Okay, so one of the things that I want to talk about now is, at Western University, how did we flip learning environments to optimize student learning? I'm going to do a couple of things here. First, I'll give us a big picture overview that analyzes the kind of conceptual approach that we took to this process, and then we'll share examples. So first, the big picture analysis, then the concrete examples. So in thinking about what do I put online, what do I keep face-to-face, how do I make that decision, that's something that we've thought through a lot in our work, the work that Nanda and I do together, because a lot of the work that we teach is very sensitive material. And I'll say more about that in a few minutes. But just as we begin the process of thinking about what do I want to keep in a synchronous face-to-face environment and what do I want to make asynchronous, here are some guidelines that we have followed. So in the online or the asynchronous, it doesn't have to be online, it could be in other ways. But here are some things that we do. So introduce concepts. So for example, one of my first flipped adventures as an instructor was when I was teaching English and writing specifically. I realized that my undergraduate students were having a really hard time transitioning between high school English classes and university English classes. In particular, they were having difficulty adjusting to the new writing norms of a university classroom. And I had so much content to cover in my first year classes that it was hard for me to take a lot of time in class to teach them writing skills for the university environment. So that's where I created one of my first online modules, and it was a module introducing first-year undergraduate students to what does writing look like in university, specifically in an English literature course. So it was an opportunity for me to introduce concepts before class time. It was an opportunity for the students to engage with information, right? What is a thesis statement? How does it differ from the ones that I've written in high school? It was an opportunity for them to construct meaning, right? Figure out for themselves what are some of these differences. It was, specifically for me, an opportunity to allow students to check for misconceptions and check their comprehension. In class, that was then the opportunity where I could provide formative feedback, right? So then I could give feedback on the way students were writing. And we could actually do in-class group activities where we wrote essays together and students practiced some of the skills that I was able to put online for them and that they had viewed prior to coming to class. So it allowed us an opportunity to dig deep into a topic that I otherwise wouldn't have had a lot of time to cover in class because of the pressure to cover a lot of content. So Nanda has mentioned that in a flipped environment, the flipped part of it, or the blended part of it, doesn't always have to come beforehand, right? I could, before class, before the face-to-face session, right, pre-class, post materials online. I could post a video lecture. I could assign readings. I could do some kind of pre-assessment before class. We're all familiar with the face-to-face environment and the different active learning activities we can do there. But then after class is another opportunity for us to flip again. Right? So it becomes kind of a circle and not just a linear process. I can flip beforehand, introduce concepts and material to students, engage the students in class through active learning, and practice some of the theory and examples I've introduced beforehand. And after class is an additional opportunity for me to flip again, give students an opportunity to reflect and debrief on the learning that occurred in class. So the examples that we're going to share with you from Western will take you through these different opportunities or these different ways of approaching a flipped classroom. We'll give you some examples where there was a pre-flipped opportunity and the face-to-face. We'll show you some examples where there was a face-to-face class followed by a post-flipped opportunity, and then one where we incorporated all three. Right? There was a pre-flipped opportunity, the face-to-face class session, and then something flipped that happened after class as well. When I introduce a flipped environment to students, I actually discuss with them what the benefits are for the students to try to reduce learner resistance in my class. So what are the benefits for students? The benefits are many. One particular benefit is that in many studies, students get higher scores at the end of the class because they have had an opportunity to delve deeper into the content. There's improved retention of course material for students. Students have reported greater or at least equal satisfaction with the course in flipped environments, and it results in an increased confidence in their abilities. If we think about their abilities for a second, what are they gaining specifically? There have been positive gains in problem-solving skills, conceptual understanding of course materials, and student retention, as I mentioned. So these are all really positive benefits for students.
And so Barbara Kerr's research that we cited here, she's at the University of Ontario Institute of Technology. Her research was in engineering, but there were similar results came out of a study on flipping a chemistry course at Western. Dr. David Brox has done research at 2 institutions with us and his previous institution, and found a very similar pattern of increased student learning and more confidence with the material in an introductory chemistry course. So he has created online modules for each of his lectures in using Articulate Storyline as well as some Adobe products. So it's a PowerPoint with voiceover examples online. Again, a huge investment of time. He said he did 46 takes on some of the lectures that he was recording. But then in class, they can engage with real-life applications of the qualities of gases and other chemistry concepts that have really fantastic opportunities to illustrate their use in real life and makes drawing material much more interesting.
And so these benefits occur with the caveat that engagement, no matter the modality, matters for student learning. So we want high engagement through active learning strategies in our face-to-face sessions, but also in the flipped sessions, the pre and post. And so those are some of the examples that Nanda and I are going to share with you.
So we wanted to start by introducing you to a really exciting project that our e-learning team has been engaging with at Western. It's called Supported Course Redesign. The university has committed a fairly significant amount of funding to help flip and blend large enrollment introductory courses. And so our e-learning team designed an approach where they bring 3 or 4 faculty members together with their design teams to collaborate and work together for a semester on redesigning their course. So the course design team includes the faculty member, TAs, or sometimes these are team-taught courses, so multiple faculty members. Someone from our information technology services, our information technology team that creates online learning objects, a librarian, and a curriculum expert from our teaching center, as well as someone from the e-learning team. So a fairly large redesign team who meet once a week for the whole semester and are engaging in the redesign process as a community of practice. So similar to what you've started with your flipped learning community here. And it's worked really effectively. We're in the second group of classes we're redesigning. We've redesigned our intro biology courses, a health science course. Now we're working on statistics and chemistry. And an intro engineering course. And I think the next round, the calculus and physics are going to be among those that we're redesigning. So we wanted to show you a quick video that one of the faculty members, Dr. Tom Haffey, created with his design team to capture the process and talk about the benefits of flipped learning. Does anybody know what technology we've used here?
Learning glass.
You call it learning glass, we call it Lightboard. I think it's the same technology. So Dr. Hundy is our e-learning and curriculum specialist, and then Tom Haffey is the faculty member. And we'll show you a minute or two of their, oops. It disappeared somehow. Let me do that while Aisha's taking on bio redesign. Apologies, looks like we clicked another YouTube video.
I'm Tom Haffey, and I coordinate first-year biology here at Western. And every year we welcome 1,400 students onto campus. They come from all over the world, 10% from international, 10% from outside of Ontario. About 60% of them are young women. And they all have done exceptionally well in high school. They bring well over 90% averages into our classroom. So 1,400 students. And we then also have 50 TAs, about 20 undergraduate mentors, 3 faculty members, 4 staff. And we all feel like we're part of a huge network where we're bouncing ideas around, ideas that students bring, ideas that the faculty bring. Just try to give them a chance to mash up together a little bit.
So I just wanted to play that opening 1 minute just to give you a sense of the scope and the scale of this particular course that's being flipped. I'm going to skip ahead now.
So 50 TAs, 1,400 students. It is a team-taught course, so Tom does not do this alone. He's an incredible national award-winning faculty member, but he has some help, and that help is very critical in making this course a success. So students attended lectures traditionally, and then participated in labs in various shifts. So twice a week they would have a wet lab experience where they conducted experiments. And so in the next section, Tom's going to talk about what they have done to flip the lab experience particularly and how it's benefited students.
Mm-hmm. Particularly the benefits for students.
In the past, we would ask students, read the lab manual before you come to the lab. But now we can invite them into a kind of a virtual world, a virtual context online that puts their lab work in a light that we just could never do before. So in the past, when you come into a science lab, the emphasis has often been on doing an experiment. And in order to have so many people do experiments in a relatively short time, we tended to just give them a recipe to follow. And then they were very stressed about getting data to put in their report, and it just wasn't science. So with blending the labs, we can move some of the thinking around doing science, some of the repetition that we just can't do in the lab, we can move that online. So that when people come into the lab, into this wet space, where we have them face-to-face, working in small groups, we can really focus on skill development, really focus on manual dexterity, handling animals, using instrumentation, and really feel confident, help them feel confident that they're proficient at that before they move on. Then some of the experimenting can be done as the lab follows up in an online environment. So blending the lectures allows us to do what people call flipping, and now also flipping in the labs is just much more robust than it ever could be in the past. So in the end, what the SCORE program has enabled us to do is to really energize these connections. The connections are not just among individuals, but really they're ideas. This network could be ideas in one person's mind, or they could be ideas in the minds of different people. But the SCORE program allows us to really make sure that these connections are robust online and in face-to-face. And one of the major benefits of all of this is community. Students have an increased sense of academic community. They have opportunities to check their understanding against someone else's. They get a look at the diversity of ways of thinking about various kinds of problems. So we're really looking forward to implementing this whole redesign of our course and to try to build a much more effective academic community in first-year biology.
And with Tom Happy there, that was Dr. Beth Hundy, who is on our e-learning team that Nanda mentioned at the opening of this session.
She's very multi-talented. She's had a PhD in geography and teaches in our active learning space, and she's an artist on top of that. So they worked on the redesign last year and had a chance to implement the course this fall, starting in September. So the first semester is just wrapping up. They're getting ready for their midterm exam. It's a full-year course. One of the things I wanted to show you is that redesign process, they really thought about how to communicate the purpose of these activities to the students. So what you see on the screen is an excerpt from the syllabus of Biology 101, where the instructors explain to the students the redesign process and the tools they're going to use to engage in learning, to let them know that this is an innovative experience, that it's unique, different from other courses they might have done, so they understand the rationale. And they continue to engage in that conversation at each step through the process during the year to get buy-in from students. Often we see student resistance to innovation when students feel like, I can't just sit here and take notes. I need to do extra work online. And so another important thing is to communicate to students that when we're moving learning outside of the classroom, that's not an add-on, that they're not going to have to do 25% more work if we're flipping the classroom. So something has to give. Letting them know that the workload is the same. They would probably spend 6 hours a week reading the chapter in the textbook. Instead of doing that, they're engaging with the material in ways that's more interesting, more interactive, that will lead to deep learning, but letting them know and inoculating against this fear that the workload is going to increase with flipped learning. And so this is one of the ways in which Tom and his colleagues have decided to do that.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about a graduate level course that we offer at Western, that Nanda and I are part of a team of instructors who teach in that course. So the course is called The Theory and Practice of University Teaching, It's a course for graduate students to help prepare them for careers as future faculty. There are roughly about 25 to 30 doctoral students in the course each year, and they come from a very, very broad range of disciplinary backgrounds. They come from all across campus. And with that comes a diverse background level of knowledge and teaching experience. And so one of the ways that we have met this need for differentiated instruction in the course is through a flipped approach. So what we've done now is, the course has always been flipped, but now it's officially a blended course where students engage in 4 hours of lecture material each week.
Actually, we flipped it about 8 or 9 years ago. Before that, it was more traditional, expert models, the great teacher at the front of the room telling you how you should teach. And then we decided to flip it, and students did readings about active learning, curriculum theory, and in class we just used the time to demonstrate those active learning activities so that these future faculty can then use it in their own teaching. And so in the last couple of years, we flipped and blended it. So now it's triple redesign, which is lots of fun.
Okay, we've been teaching the course. The course has been offered for 30 years. I guess 30 years ago it wasn't flipped yet. I'm making us out to be more innovative than we actually are. So the current course is offered, there's 4 hours of lecture for students each week. 1 hour is fully online, and it occurs usually before they attend the class lecture. And then the face-to-face component of the class is 3 hours. And I'm calling it a lecture, but it's an active classroom. And so it's not the instructor at the front of the room, but the synchronous components of the class are very active, where students are very, very engaged. In the course, in the past couple of years, a group of 3 universities in Ontario, we received a grant to create online modules, a series of 6 online modules to be included in this teaching and learning higher education course that's offered across Canada and across Ontario. So we collaborated with 3 other universities and created 6 online modules. Our university, we were involved in creating the online module for active learning and the globalization of learning. So those are 2 modules. We have a bit.ly link at the top so you can access the modules and take a look at the way that the modules are designed and the kinds of components that are included in the module. By collaborating with other institutions and creating these online modules, that gave us the opportunity to completely blend and flip our graduate level course. Nanda, did you want to add something?
Yeah, so it was probably a 6-month project with a lot of people from each university.
So 6 months to create the 2 modules.
The 2 modules. So again, a huge investment of time. We created the content, and then because we were busy running faculty development, we gave some of the funding we received to D2L, our colleagues at D2L. Desire to Learn, and just said, can you create a beautiful online module for us? Here's what we want. And so there was a lot of back and forth there too. So we actually hired outside consultants to put it online. A significant part of the funding went for that, simply because we had to continue our regular daily work at teaching and couldn't take that much time. And so there were colleagues doing this who have the expertise on creating really great online, visually appealing online materials. But we do have faculty members who work with students at Western to create online learning objects. And we have a medical science faculty member who created an online rat dissection simulation. So students don't have to be in the lab and cut apart cute little rats. But they can do it online. More students can get hands-on practice, and it's actually really cute. But it's a very powerful experience to give more practice to large numbers of medical students and anatomy students. So it can be done in-house too. Here we were sort of on a timeline because this was a government grant, so we designed the content and we had some help.
But because of that, we now have 6 online modules that we can use in that graduate level course. So here's how we use some of the modules. The first one is the module on active learning, and so in our course, when we teach students about the importance of active learning, here's how we approach it. And you'll see through all these arrows and shapes, it's not just pre and then in class. So it's not just a pre-flipped and in class. It's actually weaving it together. There is a opportunity where students complete the online module. So that's done asynchronously at home. It focuses on the theory of active learning. So it gives graduate students the research behind why this is an important technique. It also gives them lots of examples, and I'll speak more about those examples in a moment. Then we come back to the face-to-face environment of the actual class, and we do this in a couple of different ways. First, students actually get together in small groups of 5, and they meet with a facilitator, and they practice active learning. We do 10-minute mini lessons, micro-teaching, where students practice active learning techniques and get feedback from their peers and from the facilitator.
And it's video recorded, so we get these new teachers to give a 10-minute lesson, we video record them, and it's video feedback. That's why we need extra facilitators. So the course is taught by 2 main instructors, but in each micro-teach session, members of our teaching center team come in, so then we have 5 or 6 facilitators doing the face-to-face breakout groups for 3 weeks. And then we go back to the 2 main instructors. So again, investment of facilitator time, but it's really worth it in terms of the impact. We've done research on the impact of the course, and the increase in self-efficacy for teaching and using active learning has been very, very significant.
And a lot of that has been due to the micro-teaching component. We then come back, so continue the face-to-face experience. We come back to the large class group of 30, and we debrief the micro-teaching experience and talk about what did you learn and how will you apply this in your teaching. After that face-to-face component, there's another asynchronous opportunity for students where they get to reflect deeper on their learning and apply it in a different way. So now students go home and they write a teaching philosophy statement using what they've learned. And this teaching philosophy statement feedback is provided from the small group micro-teaching facilitators. So we continue to use the facilitators who came in to help the graduate students with the micro-teaching.
So in a university course, you could use your TAs to facilitate small group sessions, right? That would be an interesting equivalent if you don't have 5 faculty members contributing to a course. You could use, we have some universities who have undergraduate teaching assistants who are serving as leaders for small group learning experiences. So there are many ways in which you can implement small group learning or problem-based learning in the face-to-face session.
Yeah, it's a mentorship opportunity for those upper-year undergraduates or TAs, and a deep learning opportunity for students in your class. So here's what the active learning module itself looks like. Here it has 6 sections in it, ranging from what is active learning to evidence that it works. And one of the interesting things in the module is that
I'm trying to show the, in case you want to go and actually look and go around, so teaching higher ed, go back.
So one of the interesting things that the module does is it allows for self-directed learning. When we talk about active learning in the module, we've divided it between large group instruction, small group instruction, and individual active learning opportunities. So this allows graduate students to go into the module at points at which they're interested in, and based on their own developmental stages, based on how much they already know or don't know about active learning. The other thing that we've done in the module is we have provided short videos, so 2-minute videos from award-winning faculty at our institution on how they incorporate active learning in their classes. And we have, this is Dr. Mike Atkinson. He teaches a psychology course. It used to be almost 2,000 students. Now it's 1,800 to 1,000 students. And he is a big advocate on our campus for active learning in large classrooms. So in these videos, he talks about how he manages to do this in large class settings.